the range of what you can do with container gardening, with food gardening, is really not that limited. It's the size of your pot, how much sunlight you have, and there are a few things I'd just like to say before we start doing a walk around and talk about those window boxes and hanging baskets and container gardens out there. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the concept of what they're doing or the colors or ideas can be translated into a beautiful, well-grown food garden. So when you're picking your container, the size is pretty unlimited. What could be a container, likewise, is pretty unlimited. What you must have are drainage holes in the bottom of it. And if they aren't there, then you must find a way to drill those in. If it is a piece of pottery that does not drain, we have, at least in here, there is a special bit that you can buy, attach to your drill, and safely drill holes in it. For your soil, don't use garden dirt. Go and buy potting soil, good potting soil. It's been developed now so that it retains moisture and drains. And both of those are the things that you need. When you put your soil in your container, and the research has been done, believe me, this is really solid ground. Do not put pieces of old broken pots in the bottom of your container and then put the soil on top thinking this will make things drain better. It all clogs up. It just begins compressing in there when you do that, and it's very important that you find some other use for those shards. But don't use them in there to make your plants, perform poorly. And I was looking at, and books are still coming out, magazine articles are still coming out telling people to put that at the bottom of the pots. And like I say, the research has been done at least 10 years ago, maybe 15. And it takes a while for information to really get sort of a solid thing in your mind because we grew up putting shards at the bottom of our pots. But we must change. And full sun is often directed when you're growing plants. And that doesn't mean, a full 12, 15. That means 6 hours of full sun exposure a day. And that starts making it a lot more accessible for many gardeners who know that they're not exposed all day long. And if you have less than that, then I suggest that you focus on leafy vegetables instead of fruiting plants, because your salads, your parsley, your chard, even your green onions, things that grow in the ground, beets, could get by with a little less sun than those plants that produce fruits like your tomatoes and your cucumbers and your squash. And they really do need that sun to stimulate them into fruiting mode. So just keep those principles in mind. But your first tool is your good observant eye when you're working with your plants and actually noticing that something is going on that doesn't look quite right, whether it's insects or disease. For insects, honestly, take a hose, put your finger over the nozzle, and squirt off an aphid if you see it, or something else that you don't like there. Next step, insecticidal soap, or mix up a soapy mixture. If you want to step it up a bit, put in some cayenne pepper and a little garlic and filter it so it doesn't clog up the nozzle, and use that. And that will generally work as a very good repellent. If things persist, if you're growing citrus, and we're going to talk about that out in the garden a little bit, or even a bay tree indoors, they get an insect called scale that mischievously turns right into the color of the stem that it's on, so you may not see it. And you just wipe that off with a swab of gauze that's been dipped in rubbing alcohol. And just do that back and forth and clean it up. And you do that with the scale. If you start seeing ants coming around your food plants or anything else, beware. They may be setting up a farming operation. If you have spider bites and you're starting to see a lot of sort of browning of the leaves and they look dry and crispy, then you get a sprinkler head with a nice mist and water the underside of the plants twice a day. It could be a sprayer, and that moisture will interfere with their breeding cycle. And so you do keep that up for a week, and that will probably be enough to get rid of that problem. If you see white fly, you're going to have to resort to using a commercial pyrethrum spray. And again, you'll have to do that every 3 days because their breeding cycle is a 3-day cycle. So you keep that up for about 10 days and that'll take care of that. Once in a while you'll see it on tomatoes that have come in from a greenhouse. So that's why I'm mentioning it to you. And you might see it on other things that have come in from a greenhouse. They love greenhouse life. So look at the nice color here. And we have basically no edibles, but something that's very attractive in this box. So if you wanted to do orange and purple, should we say, or purple red, this is a sweet potato vine, but it's not going to produce much in the way of sweet potatoes that are edible. So I would say kind of forget that. Spinach beet is one of my very favorite plants to use in a container. It gives you a wonderful deep red color. And if you wanted something that was orange, you could have some trailing nasturtiums in there, and then a variety of lettuces. And you could put maybe 3 plants or 4 plants of Tuscan kale or other taller growing kale in the back to give you that nice vertical element. Now here, this is our one truly edible container. Just, you know, everybody should have 1 or 2 chives plants. They're so valuable. The flowers of chives are edible and delectable. And when it's ready and it's blooming, pinch it off right at the bottom of the stem and take it in your finger and give it a twist, and your hand will fill with a cluster of small chive blossoms. And then you sprinkle that over cheese or an omelet or a salad, and you will have this delectable fresh chive flower flavor that tastes like chives. Very, very good. This type of begonia, the tuberous begonias, are edible. And in the book I have a recipe for a tuberous begonia sorbet. You can use it with a little bit with salads. It has kind of a sweetly sharp acidity to it. And I know that sounds a little bit, but a very piquant flavor. And not only do they add rich color and perform in shade, but you can use a bit of them in your cooking.
Just the yellow? Not the purple?
Oh, any color.
Oh, okay.
Any color.
Now, how often do you have to, do you add any fertilizers or anything like that?
Oh, I fertilize.
How often do you fertilize, the dirt?
Oh,
because
the beginning of summer,
right,
I work fertilizer into the soil.
Mm-hmm.
I rely very, very heavily on liquid seaweed all season long.
Okay.
And with my herb plants, I stop fertilizing the 10th of August because they're perennials. Mm-hmm. I want them to be hardy. I don't want to force growth in the fall or as fall is coming. I want them to start tuning down a little bit.